Ambassador Kim's boots echoed against the polished obsidian floor as he walked through the massive halls of the Velnari capital ship. The alien vessel was 3 times larger than any human battleship, its corridors lined with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. Skulls of unknown species decorated the walls like grotesque art pieces, while captured weapons hung in display cases, silent testimony to the Dominion's brutal history. The air tasted metallic and carried the scent of ozone from the ship's exotic power systems. Kim's diplomatic escort, Captain Park, walked 2 steps behind him, her trained eyes cataloguing every detail. Emergency exits, weapon placements, guard positions. Old habits from her days as a Marine never died. Her hand instinctively drifted toward her ceremonial sidearm, though she knew it would be useless against the advanced energy shields protecting this floating fortress. The massive doors to the high command chamber slid open with a hiss, revealing a cavernous space that could have housed a small city. Floating crystalline platforms held the various council members, each representing a different caste within Velnari society. Warriors with scarred carapaces, scientists with cybernetic implants replacing half their skulls, and nobles draped in the precious metals stolen from 100 worlds. At the center, on the highest platform, sat High Commander Thexal. His scales shifted from deep purple to angry red as the humans approached, a biological threat display that had intimidated countless species over the centuries. 4 massive arms ended in razor-sharp claws that could tear through steel, while his serpentine tail coiled around the base of his throne like a metallic whip. "So," Thexal's voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers, "the little mammals have finally grown brave enough to enter the serpent's den." His mandibles spread wide, revealing rows of crystalline teeth. "Tell me, Ambassador Kim, do you know how many of your kind we have processed through our harvesting stations?" Kim maintained his composure despite the chill running down his spine. He had seen the intelligence reports, entire human colonies stripped of their populations, families separated and sold to different corners of the galaxy. Children as young. Has 5 working in alien mines, their parents ground into biological paste to feed Velnari war beasts. 72 standard hours, Kim stated, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "The Earth Colonial Alliance demands you cease all raids on human settlements. This is your final warning." The council erupted in what could only be described as mocking laughter. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with the screech of metal on metal. Several junior council members nearly fell from their platforms, overcome with amusement at the human audacity. "Final warning?" Thexal's tail lashed the air, creating sonic booms that rattled the chamber's supports. "Little human, your species discovered fire while we were building star engines. We have been raiding the outer systems since before your ancestors crawled from their caves. The Velnari Dominion has conquered 17 galaxies." Captain Park's jaw tightened as she remembered the distress calls from New Sol Colony. 3,000 settlers, gone in a single night. The only thing left behind was a crater where the main settlement used to stand and the distinctive energy signature of Velnari harvesting beams. One of the scientific council members, his head more machine than flesh, leaned forward with interest. "Tell me, Ambassador, what consequences could your primitive species possibly impose? Your largest warships carry chemical propulsion systems. Your weapons fire solid projectiles. We have defensive shields that have withstood the fury of dying stars." The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing human colonies under attack. Velnari strike cruisers descended from orbit like metal vultures, their beam weapons carving through defensive installations as if they were made of paper. Humans fled in terror as mechanical harvesting drones swept through streets, collecting anything of value, including the people themselves. "Look upon your legacy, human," Thexal gestured at the recordings with one of his massive claws. 300 years of raids, millions of your kind processed, entire sectors cleansed of your infestation, and you dare to threaten us? Kim watched the recordings without flinching, though inside his heart burned with cold fury. Every face in those recordings represented someone's family, someone's dreams cut short by alien greed. 72 hours, he repeated. "Your weapons are toys," another council member screeched. "Your ships barely qualify as spacecraft. Return to your breeding worlds, and perhaps we will allow some of your species to survive as livestock." The insults continued for several minutes, each alien trying to outdo the others in their contempt for humanity. They spoke of humans like farmers discussing cattle, debating the best methods for processing and storage. Captain Park's hand never moved from her weapon, though she knew drawing it would mean instant death for both diplomats. Finally, Kim had heard enough. He straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Thexol. "You have 72 hours to comply with our demands. After that, you will face the consequences of your actions." Thexol's scales shifted to deep crimson, the Velnari color of rage. "Consequences? From you? We are eternal. We are inevitable. We are—" "Warned," Kim interrupted, his voice cutting through the alien's tirade like a blade. "Nothing more needs to be said." Without another word, the human ambassador turned and walked toward the exit. Captain Park followed, neither diplomat showing their backs to the aliens until they were safely out of the chamber. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos as various members debated whether to kill the humans immediately or let them return home to spread fear among their kind. The shuttle bay was filled with Velnari military hardware that made Captain Park's blood run cold. Assault mechs the size of buildings stood in neat rows, their weapon systems capable of leveling entire cities. Atmospheric processors designed to terraform worlds by exterminating existing life forms. Transport ships specifically designed for moving captured populations across interstellar distances. As their diplomatic shuttle lifted off from the massive alien vessel, Park finally allowed herself to speak. "Think they'll listen, Ambassador?" Kim stared out at the alien fleet surrounding them, hundreds of warships, each one capable of destroying human colonies with ease. In the distance, massive industrial platforms processed raw materials stolen from conquered worlds, their foundries belching exotic smoke into the void of space. "No, Captain," he said quietly. "I don't think they will." 3 star systems away, Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's most advanced warship. The vessel hummed with barely contained energy, its experimental drive, systems allowing it to cross vast distances in mere hours. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring communications from across human space. The coded transmission from Ambassador Kim arrived exactly on schedule. Lee read it twice, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the weight of what it contained. 40 years of military service had taught him that some decisions changed the course of history. "Sir?" Lieutenant Cho approached cautiously. She had served under Lee for 5 years and had never seen him look quite so focused. Lee closed the message and looked out at the stars visible through the bridge's reinforced viewports. Somewhere out there, human colonies lived in fear of the next raid. Families went to sleep not knowing if they would wake up as free people or alien property. "Send word to all fleet commanders," Lee said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute conviction. "Operation Nightfall is authorized." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Every officer present knew what Operation Nightfall meant: the end of humanity's patience with alien predators. Lee walked to the tactical display where holographic representations of human fleet positions glowed like distant stars. 72 hours, he murmured, watching as his orders propagated across the galaxy at the speed of light. The hunt was about to begin. The 73rd hour arrived with deadly silence across the void of space. Commander Vexka's patrol fleet had been cruising through the Kepler Drift, a notorious asteroid field where pirates often hid their stolen goods. His 3 escort destroyers maintained perfect formation, their sensors sweeping the rocky debris for any signs of human activity. Vexka had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries, his purple scales marked with ritual scars from countless victories. He remembered when humans first appeared on the galactic stage, pathetic creatures in crude metal ships that barely qualified as spacecraft. The idea that these mammals could pose any threat to the mighty Velnari Dominion was laughable. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, his sensor operator reported. Looks like a damaged human freighter drifting near the large asteroid cluster. Vexka's mandibles clicked with anticipation. Easy prey, probably refugees fleeing one of their recent raids. Signal the escorts to surround it. We'll board and see what cargo they're carrying. But as his ships moved into position, something went wrong. The escort destroyer Talon's Reach simply vanished from his screens. No explosion, no debris field, no distress signal. One moment it was there, the next empty space. Sensor malfunction, Vexka muttered, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Vectar's Fang, report your position. Silence answered him. His second escort ship had also disappeared without a trace. Expand search parameters. Vexka's voice cracked like a whip across his bridge. Check all systems for malfunctions. Find my ships. His crew worked frantically, their clawed hands dancing across holographic controls. But deep in his ancient warrior's heart, Vexka knew this wasn't equipment failure. Something was hunting them in the darkness between the asteroids. 3 kilometers away, Captain Han watched the Velnari command ship through her viewport with cold satisfaction. Her stealth corvette, the UES Shadow Dancer, hung motionless in the asteroid field like a predator waiting to strike. The ship's experimental adaptive camouflage bent light around its hull, making it practically invisible even at close range. The technology was brand new. Human engineers had been working on it for decades, inspired by studying cuttlefish and chameleons from Earth's oceans. What nature had perfected over millions of years, human ingenuity had recreated in the depths of space. Targets eliminated, Captain, reported her weapons officer, Ensign Bay. The young woman's fingers hovered over the firing controls, ready to complete their mission. The command ship is alone now. Han held up her hand for patience. She had learned her hunting skills not in the military academies, but growing up on the frontier colony of New Busan. When the winter predators came down from the mountains, you didn't just kill them quickly. You let them know they were being hunted first. Fear was a weapon more powerful than any plasma cannon. Let them search, Han whispered. Let them understand what it feels like to be prey. Across the vast expanse of Velnari space, similar scenes played out like a coordinated symphony of destruction. Human strike teams emerged from hyperspace at the edge of sensor range, struck with surgical precision, then vanished before their enemies could respond. It was warfare unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Song piloted her heavy destroyer through the quantum foam between dimensions, using experimental jump drives that allowed her ship to appear anywhere in normal space within seconds. The UES Silent Thunder materialized directly behind a Velnari supply convoy, its weapons already charging. Fire, Song commanded. Twin beams of concentrated energy lanced out, not to destroy the alien ships, but to cripple them. Engines went dark. Life support systems failed. Communications arrays sparked and died. Within minutes, the convoy was helpless, drifting in the void like broken toys. But instead of boarding the ships or taking prisoners, Song's vessels simply vanished again, leaving the aliens to contemplate their fate in the cold darkness of space. The message was clear. Humans could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the Velnari could do to stop them. Admiral Corvin paced the bridge of his flagship like a caged beast, his forearms gesticulating wildly as reports flooded. In from across the Dominion, the massive dreadnought Heart of Conquest had been the pride of the Velnari fleet for 3 centuries, its weapons capable of cracking planets in half. "How many ships have we lost?" Corvin demanded, his scales shifting from purple to deep red. With rage, his tactical officer, a battle-scarred veteran named Kolvan, consulted his holographic displays with growing alarm. 47 confirmed missing, sir. No survivors, no wreckage, no indication of what happened to them. Impossible. Corvin's tail lashed against the deck, leaving deep gouges in the reinforced metal. The humans don't have this capability. Their technology is primitive garbage. But even as he spoke, Corvin felt a cold dread settling in his chest. The reports were too consistent, too widespread to be coincidence. Somehow the mammals had developed weapons and tactics that could make Velnari warships simply disappear. His aide, a younger warrior named Yexto, approached cautiously. The scales around his throat were pale with fear, but he forced himself to speak. Sir, what if we underestimated their capabilities? What if... Corvin's claw struck him across the face, sending the younger alien sprawling across the bridge. The humans are prey animals. They cower in their colonies like frightened herbivores. The lights flickered. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the massive ship as something disrupted the primary power grid. On the tactical display, a new contact appeared directly off their starboard bow. "Contact bearing 090, the sensor operator screamed, his voice breaking with terror. "Energy signature it's gone." But Captain Song had never really been there. Her ship existed in normal space for exactly 0.3 seconds, just long enough to fire a quantum torpedo directly into the heart of Conquest's engine core. By the time the Velnari sensors registered the attack, the silent thunder was already jumping back into hyperspace. The massive dreadnought shuddered as its primary engines went dark. Emergency power flickered on, bathing the bridge in eerie red light. For the first time in 3 centuries, the heart of Conquest was helpless. Thousands of light years away, Admiral Lee stood in the command center of his mobile fleet base, watching the hunt unfold on dozens of holographic displays. Each screen showed a different sector of Velnari space, where human strike teams moved like ghosts through the darkness. The aging admiral had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. Every tactical simulation, every wargame, every sleepless night planning how humanity would respond when the aliens finally pushed too far. Operation Nightfall wasn't just a military campaign. It was the culmination of decades of careful preparation. "Sir," Captain Nam reported from her station, "the Dominion is pulling back to their core systems. They're abandoning the outer colonies." Lee nodded slowly, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had expected this. Predators always retreated to their dens when the hunt turned against them. But this time there would be no safe haven. "Phase 2 complete," he announced to his staff. "Initiate Phase 3. A young communications officer raised her hand nervously. "Admiral, what about prisoners? Some of the Velnari ships are broadcasting surrender signals." Lee turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting decades of military service and the weight of command. He thought about the colony worlds burned to ash, the families torn apart by alien raiders, the children sold into slavery. Across the galaxy, "There are no prisoners in a hunt, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "Only prey." The hunt had begun in earnest, and across the stars, the Velnari Dominion was learning what it meant to be afraid. The fortress world of Kethmora hung in space like a metallic jewel, its surface covered in weapon installations that could reduce entire starfleets to cosmic dust. For over 1,000 years, no enemy force had ever breached its defenses. The planet's core had been converted into a massive power generator, feeding energy to shield projectors that could withstand the explosion of dying stars. High Commander Thexal stood on the observation deck of his command citadel, watching his remaining fleet take defensive positions around the planet. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with plasma cannons formed a protective shell, while smaller patrol craft darted between the orbital defense platforms like deadly insects. "Let the humans come," Thexal growled, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of defiance. "They will break themselves against our walls like waves against stone. Kethmora has never fallen, and it never will." His aide, Yexto, still bore the healing scars from their previous encounter. "Sir, perhaps we should consider evacuation. The humans have proven more resourceful than we anticipated." Thexal's tail whipped through the air, barely missing the younger alien's head. "Evacuation? We are Velnari. We do not run from mammals." He gestured toward the massive defense grid visible through the transparent dome. "Those weapons have protected us for a millennium. No force in the galaxy can penetrate our shields." 3 kilometers beneath the surface, in a maintenance tunnel that hadn't been inspected in decades, Colonel Zhang checked her chronometer one final time. 6 months of careful preparation had led to this moment. Her infiltration team had arrived on Kethmora, not as invaders, but as part of the normal flow of galactic commerce that even the paranoid Velnari couldn't completely stop. Some had posed as traders from the neutral Krelak species, their faces surgically altered and their vocal cords modified to speak in alien tongues. Others had come as refugees from human colonies, playing the part of broken survivors seeking sanctuary. A few had even managed to get jobs as maintenance workers in the planet's vast industrial complexes. "Tiger Team, report," Zhang whispered into her comm device, using code names that meant nothing to alien interceptors. "Tiger 1 in position at the primary fusion reactor," came Sergeant O's voice. "Charges planted and ready." "Tiger 2 at the shield control matrix," reported Corporal Kim. "System overrides installed." One by one, her team checked in from positions throughout the planet's critical infrastructure. They had spent months mapping every power conduit, every backup system, every possible weakness in Kethmora's seemingly impregnable defenses. Above them, the Velnari leadership celebrated their supposed safety. In the grand halls of the command citadel, alien nobles toasted their inevitable victory with fermented beverages made from the blood of conquered species. They laughed about how the primitive humans would dash themselves against Kethmora's shields like insects against a force field. None of them suspected that death was already walking among them. "All teams execute on my mark," Zhang breathed into her comm. Around her, the maintenance tunnel hummed with the massive energies that kept the fortress world operational. Soon, that same energy would become their weapon. 3, 2, mark. The lights went out across Kethmora. Every power grid, every backup generator, every emergency system died simultaneously as carefully placed charges severed the connections between the planet's core reactor and its defense networks. In the command citadel, Thexal watched in horror as his impregnable fortress became a dead rock floating in space. "Impossible!" he roared, striking his control console with enough force to crack the reinforced metal. "The power systems are buried, kilometers underground. How could they—" His question was answered by the sight of human soldiers emerging from access tunnels throughout the citadel. They moved with military precision, their weapons trained on shocked Velnari defenders who had never imagined enemies could appear inside their most secure facility. In orbit, Captain Yoon watched through her ship's targeting scope as Kethmora's planetary shields flickered and died like a candle in the wind. The massive orbital defense platforms, deprived of power, drifted helplessly in space. "Defensive positions eliminated," Yoon reported to her fleet. Beginning precision bombardment, the human task force opened fire with surgical precision. Instead of trying to destroy the entire planet, they targeted specific military installations while leaving civilian areas untouched. Weapon foundries exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Military spaceports became craters of molten metal. Command bunkers collapsed as quantum torpedoes burrowed deep into the planet's crust before detonating. But the fall of Kethmora was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, human intelligence networks activated assets that had been positioned for years. The Velnari had made enemies of countless species during their centuries of conquest, and now those enemies were eager to help humanity's cause. On the asteroid mining station of Velkosh, the insectoid Krelak workers who had suffered under Velnari oppression for generations suddenly turned on their overseers. What appeared to be a spontaneous uprising was actually a carefully coordinated operation guided by human special forces who had been training the rebels for months. Captain Song materialized her stealth destroyer in the middle of a Velnari supply convoy, but this time she wasn't alone. Krelak pirate ships emerged from hyperspace alongside her, their crude weapons blazing with the fury of the oppressed. The convoy was destroyed within minutes, its cargo of stolen resources scattered among the asteroids. Commander Vexka, one of the few Velnari officers to survive the initial wave of attacks, thought he had found safety in an ancient pirate hideout deep within the Carrion Nebula. The location had been secret for centuries, known only to the most desperate criminals and fugitives. He was wrong. Lieutenant Moon's boarding party cut through the asteroid's primitive defenses like a hot knife through ice. Her soldiers moved, with the confidence of hunters who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. "How?" Vexka gasped as human troops secured the hideout's command center. "This location was secret. Even our own intelligence services didn't know about it." Moon removed her helmet, revealing a young face marked by the hard experiences of frontier warfare. Her colony had been one of the first hit by Velnari raiders, and she still remembered watching her neighbors dragged away in chains. "Nothing is secret when the whole galaxy wants you gone, Commander," she said, her voice carrying the cold satisfaction of justice served. Every pirate you've cheated, every smuggler you've betrayed, every species you've enslaved, they all pointed us in your direction. The truth was devastating for the Velnari to comprehend. They had ruled through fear for so long that they had forgotten the difference between fear and respect. Now every species they had wronged over the centuries was eagerly helping humanity track down the scattered remnants of their empire. Trader captains provided shipping manifests showing Velnari supply routes. Former slaves drew maps of hidden bases from memory. Even neutral governments quietly shared intelligence about Velnari movements through their space. Admiral Lee received reports from across the galaxy in his mobile command center, each one documenting another Velnari stronghold eliminated or enemy leader captured. The holographic displays showed a rapidly shrinking area of alien-controlled space as humanity's net tightened around their prey. "Sir," Captain Nam approached with a communication tablet in her hands. "We've received a transmission from the Dominion High Command. They're requesting immediate parley." Lee studied the message, noting the desperate tone of what had once been an arrogant empire. The transmission was signed by a dozen high-ranking Velnari officials, each one begging for terms, offering concessions, promising reparations. "Response?" Nam asked. Lee handed the tablet back without expression. 40 years of military service had taught him that some enemies deserved no mercy, especially those who preyed on the innocent. "None, Captain," he said quietly. "We continue the hunt." Across the stars, the message was clear. The age of Velnari dominance was ending, and humanity would accept nothing less than total victory. The Nexus drifted in the void between star systems, a massive construct of twisted metal and alien technology that had taken the Velnari 3 centuries to build. The battle station was larger than most moons, its hull bristling with weapon emplacements that could destroy entire planets. In the empty darkness of deep space, it was supposed to be invisible, undetectable, the perfect hiding place for what remained of the Dominion's leadership. High Commander Thexal stalked through the command center like a caged predator, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he barked orders at his remaining officers. The once mighty leader of the Velnari war machine looked haggard, his purple scales dulled with stress and his ceremonial armor bearing the scars of recent battles. "Maintain communication silence," he commanded, his voice echoing through the cavernous bridge. "The humans cannot track us here. This station exists in the gap between their patrol routes, beyond the range of their primitive sensors." Around him, the last remnants of the Velnari fleet hung in defensive formations. 50 warships, all that remained of the thousands that had once terrorized the galaxy. Each vessel bore the marks of desperate fighting, their hulls scarred by human weapons, their crews reduced to skeleton manning levels. Admiral Zarketh, commander of the surviving fleet, approached cautiously. His left arm had been replaced with a cybernetic prosthetic after his flagship was crippled in the Battle of Kethmora. "Sir, our scouts report no human activity in this sector. Perhaps we should consider negotiating terms while we still have leverage." Thexel's tail lashed through the air, striking a control console and leaving deep gouges in the metal. "Terms? We are Velnari. We do not beg for mercy from prey animals." He gestured toward the tactical display showing their defensive positions. "This station has enough firepower to crack worlds. Let them come. We will make them pay for every meter of space." But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at Thexal's warrior heart. The humans had proven far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Their tactics were unlike anything in the military textbooks. Their technology had advanced at an impossible rate, and their determination seemed absolutely unbreakable. Yexto, his scarred aide, monitored the communication arrays with growing nervousness. The young Velnari had survived 3 separate human attacks, each time barely escaping with his life. "Sir, incoming transmission on the emergency frequency. It's Admiral Lee." The main display flickered to life, showing the weathered face of humanity's supreme military commander. Behind him, the bridge of the UES Retribution buzzed with quiet activity, human officers working with the calm efficiency of apex predators, closing in for the kill. "High Commander Thexel," Lee began, his voice carrying across the void with the weight of absolute authority. "You ignored our warning. You chose to continue your raids on human colonies even after we offered you peace." Thexel found his voice, though it cracked with rage and desperation. Human, you cannot defeat the Dominion. We are eternal. We have conquered galaxies while your kind was still crawling in mud. You are surrounded, Lee interrupted, his tone as cold as the vacuum of space. Check your sensors. The blood drained from Thexal's face as his tactical officer frantically worked the controls. One by one, human ships began appearing on the display, dozens of them materializing from stealth positions around the Nexus, like ghosts becoming solid. They had been there all along, waiting in perfect silence. Captain Kim commanded the heavy cruiser UES Vengeance, her ship's weapons trained on the Nexus's primary reactor core. Around her, fellow captains Park, Han, Song, Yoon, and dozens of others maintained firing solutions on their assigned targets. The human fleet had surrounded the battle station like a pack of wolves circling wounded prey. How? Thexel whispered, staring at the tactical display in horror. How did you find us? Lee's expression never changed. Your empire was built on the suffering of others, Commander. Every species you enslaved, every world you plundered, every family you destroyed, they all remembered. When we asked for information about your hidden bases, the galaxy was eager to help. The truth hit Thexel like a physical blow. The Nexus had been secret for centuries, but not from everyone. Slave laborers who had built parts of the station remembered its location. Traders who had delivered supplies knew the coordinates. Former prisoners who had escaped carried the knowledge of this place in their hearts, waiting for the day when someone would care enough to listen. We offer terms, Thexal shouted desperately. Reparations, territory, whatever compensation you demand. Lee studied the alien commander for a long moment. You had your chance for terms 72 hours ago, when Ambassador Kim offered you peace. You chose war instead. The human admiral turned to address his fleet, his voice carrying across. Dozens of communication channels. All ships, this is Admiral Lee. Remember the colonies that burned. Remember the children who were taken. Remember why we hunt. The battle began with a coordinated strike that lit up the darkness between stars. Human ships moved with precision, born of months of planning, their weapons targeting specific weak points in the Nexus's defenses. Quantum torpedoes burrowed deep into the station's hull before exploding, tearing massive holes in the alien structure. The Velnari fought back with desperate fury, their remaining ships launching everything they had, plasma cannons carved through space, seeking human targets. Energy mines detonated in brilliant flashes. For a few moments it seemed like the ancient predators might make their enemies pay a terrible price, but the humans had learned from every previous engagement. Their ships moved like living things, dodging and weaving through the alien fire. When they struck back, it was with surgical precision that crippled enemy vessels without destroying them completely. This wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning. Captain Song's destroyer, the Silent Thunder, appeared directly inside the Nexus's defensive perimeter, having used its experimental jump drive to bypass the outer shields. Her weapons fired point-blank into the station's power core, causing cascading failures throughout the massive structure. Within minutes, the battle was over. The Velnari fleet was either destroyed or disabled, their crews floating helplessly in escape pods. The mighty Nexus, pride of the Dominion's engineering, burned like a dying star against the cosmic darkness. Thexal found himself in the brig of a human vessel, his hands bound with energy shackles that adjusted to his alien physiology. Through the small viewport, he watched as the Nexus slowly broke apart, 3 centuries of Velnari supremacy crumbling into cosmic debris. His guard was a young human ensign named Kang, barely out of his teens, but carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen too much. The boy's face showed no hatred, only a deep sadness that spoke of personal loss. Why? Thexal whispered, his voice broken by defeat. We offered surrender. We offered reparations. Why wouldn't you? Accept terms. Kang looked at him with eyes that held depths of pain no one so young should carry. My home colony was New Incheon, one of your early raids about 8 years ago. He paused, staring out at the burning wreckage of the Nexus. I was 12 when your ships came. They took my sister along with 300 other children. Young Ensign turned away, but not before Thexal saw the tears glittering in his eyes. "We searched for years, sent messages to every corner of the galaxy, offered rewards, begged for information. We never found her." His voice grew quiet. "Some things can't be surrendered away, Commander. Some wounds don't heal just because the war is over." Outside the viewport, human ships continued their work, systematically destroying every trace of Velnari military power. But this wasn't about conquest or territory. It was about justice for countless worlds that had suffered, for families torn apart, for children who would never come home. The age of Velnari dominance was ending not with negotiation or compromise, but with the absolute finality that only the innocent could demand. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for kilometers in all directions, its crystalline walls designed to accommodate representatives from thousands of different species. Today, those walls seemed to press inward, creating an atmosphere of tension that made even the most hardened diplomats uncomfortable. Ambassador Kim walked to the central podium with measured steps, his black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the colorful robes and exotic forms surrounding him. Behind him, Admiral Lee and a full honor guard of human marines stood at perfect attention, their presence a silent reminder of humanity's newfound military power. The silence was deafening. Representatives from dozens of species, the insectoid Krelak, the gaseous Vorthak floating in their containment suits, the crystalline Silmari, whose bodies chimed softly when they moved, all watched with barely concealed fear as Kim approached. The speaking platform. "The Velnari Dominion is no more," Kim announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic amplifiers. "Their military leadership is in custody aboard human vessels, awaiting trial for crimes against sentient beings. Their raiding fleets have been eliminated to the last ship." A ripple of whispers passed through the assembly. For over 3 centuries, the Velnari had been one of the galaxy's major powers, their fleet striking fear into the hearts of countless civilizations. The idea that they could be completely destroyed in a matter of weeks was almost impossible to comprehend. Ambassador Trelvon of the Axiom Collective shifted nervously in his seat, his reptilian features betraying the anxiety he felt. His own species had conducted smaller raids on human colonies, taking advantage of what they perceived as humanity's weakness. Now, watching Kim deliver his report with calm authority, Trelvon wondered if his people would be next on humanity's list. Around him, other representatives were having similar thoughts. The Zarketh hegemony had enslaved human prisoners. The Nextar Empire had refused to trade with human colonies, attempting to isolate them economically. The Kelvosh Syndicate had sold weapons to pirates who targeted human shipping lanes. All of them had underestimated humanity. All of them were now reconsidering their positions. "The Dominion believed that might made right," Kim continued, his words measured and deliberate. "They believed that because they were strong and we were new to the stars, they could take what they wanted from us without consequence. They believed we were weak because we offered peace before war." Admiral Lee watched the alien faces carefully from his position behind the podium. 40 years of military experience had taught him to read body language across species barriers. He could see the fear in their eyes now, not just fear of human weapons, but something deeper, fear of human determination, of the absolute certainty that humanity would pursue justice no matter the cost. The Velnari had made the mistake of thinking humans were prey animals. These representatives were beginning to understand they had been wrong. "They were wrong," Kim said, his voice hardening slightly. "We gave them every opportunity to choose peace. Ambassador negotiations, trade agreements, even direct warnings delivered to their highest command. They chose to ignore those opportunities and continue their attacks on our people." On Earth, millions of humans gathered around viewing screens to watch the historic address. In the memorial gardens of New Sol, families stood before black stone walls carved with the names of every colonist killed in Velnari raids. Captain Park stood before one particular name, her daughter Minji. Taken at age 7 and never seen again, the memorial stretched for kilometers, each name representing a life cut short by alien cruelty. As Kim spoke, many of the gathered families wept quietly. finally seeing justice for their loved ones. To those species who would consider following the Dominion's path, Kim continued, his voice carrying a note of steel, remember this moment. Remember what happened when a species chose to prey upon humans, believing we were weak. Study the wreckage of their fleets. Count their empty worlds. Learn from their mistake. In the depths of space, human patrol fleets continued their methodical work. Captain Song's destroyer emerged from hyperspace near a former Velnari mining station, her sensors sweeping for any signs of remaining enemy activity. The facility was completely abandoned, its automated systems still processing ore that would never reach its intended destination. Another ghost station, reported her tactical officer Ensign Bay. Looks like they evacuated in a hurry. Song nodded, making notes in her patrol log. Across the former Dominion territory, similar scenes played out as human forces secured abandoned installations and freed the countless slaves who had been left behind in the Velnari retreat. Back in the council chambers, Kim delivered his closing statement with the weight of absolute conviction behind every word. Humanity seeks no empire, claims no dominion over other species. We ask only to be left in peace to build our civilization among the stars. We offer trade, friendship, and cooperation to any who approach us with honest intentions. He paused, letting the first part of his message sink in before delivering the warning that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. But make no mistake, we will protect our own with every resource at our disposal, and we will pursue justice to the very ends of the galaxy. Those who show mercy will receive it in return. Those who prey upon the innocent will face the consequences, no matter how long it takes or how far they run. The ambassador's eyes swept across the assembled representatives, meeting each gaze. With unwavering determination, we warned them. We gave them every chance. They chose their fate. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every being in the hall heard him clearly. Remember this when you consider how you treat our people. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, the galaxy's power structure shifted permanently. Conversations broke out across the hall as species representatives huddled together, discussing new policies toward humanity. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years were suddenly approved. Hostile actions that had been planned were quietly cancelled. Admiral Lee received reports from across human space as they returned to their ship. Sir, Lieutenant Cho approached with a communication tablet, the Council is formally requesting our fleet positions. They want to know if we're withdrawing from former Dominion territory. Lee considered the request, thinking about the hundreds of worlds that had suffered under Velnari oppression, the countless species that had been enslaved or exterminated. Someone needed to ensure this never happened again. Tell them we're establishing permanent patrol stations throughout the former Dominion territory, he decided. Someone needs to keep the peace and protect the liberated worlds. And if they object to our presence, sir? Lee's smile was as cold as the vacuum between stars. Then they're welcome to try stopping us, Lieutenant. I'm sure they'll find it educational. In the weeks that followed, human ships took up positions throughout the galaxy's former trouble spots, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Pirate raids that had plagued trade routes for centuries suddenly stopped. Slave markets closed as their operators fled, rather than face human justice. Worlds that had lived in fear for generations began to rebuild. The age of humanity had begun, built not on conquest or domination, but on the simple principle that justice must be served and the innocent protected. The galaxy had learned that humans were not prey animals to be hunted, but guardians who would pursue their enemies to the very edge of existence if necessary. In the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol, vigilant sentinels, ensuring that the lesson of the Velnari Dominion would never be forgotten. The hunt was over, but the watch would never end. The end.